So today we are going to be estimating decimal quotients. All right, we've done a lot of estimating so far this year, so estimating is not new. And we have done estimating of quotients, but it was with whole numbers and not decimals. So that process of estimating whole numbers and then estimating decimal quotients is really pretty much the same. So the first thing I want to do is I want to review the rules for estimating quotients. Okay, I'm going to type them up over here. So the first rule that we did was we round the divisor. Okay, that's the number we're dividing by. The second rule is to look at the relationship and make compatible numbers. Okay, that's where you need to look at your multiplication chart if you need to, if you don't know your facts right off the top of your head. So it would be wise if you had a multiplication chart handy, whether a physical one in front of you or if you Google a multiplication chart, that will be fine. Then if we have any, we deal with zeros. Okay, remember that means that if I have 1 in the divisor and 1 in the dividend, I can get rid of them both. And again, I'm going to put on there if needed, because we don't have that every single problem. And then for our final step, that is where we actually divide. Okay, so those are our steps. You should be taking notes, and it would be wise of you to write those steps down if you haven't already. All right, so we're going to do 4 problems together on this video, but before we do that, I just want to review these steps with you while doing it with just whole numbers, okay, just as a review. So if I have 43 divided by 7, my first step is to round my divisor. Remember, your divisor is the number you're dividing by. Okay. Now, we did say that if my divisor is a single digit, then I can keep that because I should know my 7's multiplication facts. And if I don't know my 7's multiplication facts, I should at least have a multiplication chart that I can look to it. Okay, so I'm going to keep this as a 7. I'm not going to round it. My next step is to look at the relationship and create a compatible number. So does 7 have a relationship with 43? I am going to see if I can get over to my multiplication chart to show you. Where did my multiplication chart go? I think that it is on my desktop over here. Here it is. All right, so I'm looking for 7 and 43. There is no 7 and 43. However, 7 does have a relationship with 42 right here. 7 times 6 is 42. So that is the relationship that I need right now. I'm going to write that over here so I don't forget. 7 times 6 is 42. All right, so 7 has a relationship with 42, but not 43. So I'm going to change 43 to 42. Okay, so now I don't have any zeros. Okay, if I had a 0 here and a 0 here, I could cross them off and get rid of them, but I don't. So then I just divide. Well, if 7 times 6 is 42, that means 42 divided by 7 is 6. So my estimate there is 6. Okay, so now that we've reviewed that with whole numbers, let's go ahead and do some decimals. The process is exactly the same. Okay, this process, these steps over here, doesn't change because now we're going to decimals. So let's use 42 divided by 2 and 8/10. So the first thing I want to do is I want to round my divisor. So that's 2 and 8/10. Well, I definitely don't want to leave it as 2 and 8/10 because that's not very friendly. But I know that 2 and 8/10 is pretty close to 3. And so I know that I can round that to 3, and that would be okay. So then I need to think about my relationships and compatible numbers. All right, well, if I do my multiplication charts for 3, I know that 3 times 11 is 33. 3 times 12 is 36. Now here's my slight problem today. If I'm just looking at a multiplication chart, I can only go to 36, right? I could change 42 to 36. Okay, I could do that. That's still pretty close to 42, right? Which would tell me that my estimate was 12. Okay, but look at what happens. Let me just add some groups. Okay, so 3 times 13 would be 36 plus 3, right? So that would be 39. Isn't that closer? Absolutely. Well, let's look and see what happens if I add one more group. Again, that's plus 3. And that is actually the dividend that we have. Okay, so if I say 42 divided by 3, my answer is actually right here. It's 14. Okay, so in this case, I really did not have to change and make a compatible number because 3 already has a relationship with 42. Now, as I said, if you're just looking at your multiplication chart and you didn't do this and you didn't know that 3 and 42 had a relationship, you can still change it to 36. That's still relatively close, okay? But I would say that this is definitely an underestimate and this is definitely an overestimate. So the real answer to this quotient has to be somewhere in between. All right, let's do another one. I hope you're all taking notes as we do this, because this can be tricky if you don't pay attention. All right, let's do 102 divided by 9 and 6/10. So following our step, first, round the divisor. Well, I know that 9 and 6/10 is pretty close to 10. Okay, so I'm going to make that a 10. Next, look for relationships to make compatible numbers. Remember, we normally look at just the first 2 digits. Okay, does 10 have a relationship with 10? Well, yes, it does, absolutely. So I'm going to change 102 to 100. Okay. Now, here is where I can deal with some zeros. Remember, I have to have the same amount of zeros on each side to match them up and get rid of them. So on this side, I only have 1 0. So I can only cross off 1 0 on this side. And now I have 10 divided by 1. Well, step 4 is divide. 10 divided by 1 is 10. So my quotient, my real quotient, should be close to 10. I'm going to do another one over here. The next one is 48 and 9/10 divided by 4. Now, don't get confused because this divisor was a decimal and now the dividend is a decimal. This process stays the same. Okay? So first we look at, do we round the divisor? Well, again, this is a single digit, and since it's only 1 digit and I should either know my 4s or the 4 should be on my multiplication chart, I'm going to keep my 4. Okay? Then I look for a relationship to make a compatible number. Well, again, think about the first 2 digits. First 2 digits here would be 48. Does 4 have a relationship with 48? Well, I know 4 times 11 is 44, and I know that 4 times 12 is 48. So yes, there is a relationship between 4 and 48. So I'm going to change this to a 48. Now, I could, if I really wanted to, I could add a decimal and a 0 afterwards, But remember, this 0 doesn't mean anything unless there's another digit after it. So I could write it that way or just write it as a whole number. Either way, both of these mean exactly the same thing. Okay? Well, I can see that the relationship, if 4 times 12 is 48, 48 divided by 4 is 12. So my estimate there is 12. All right, last one together. And then we'll do some together as a group with the whiteboard. Okay, so this one, 72 and 59 hundredths divided by 7. Okay, I realized some of my steps got erased. This is zeros, deal with zeros. And then this is divide. All right, so first I round my divisor. Well, it's a single digit, so I'm going to keep it by itself. Look for relationships to make a compatible number. Does 7 have a relationship with 72? Well, I know that 7 times 10 is 70, and I know that 7 times 11 is 77. This would be too much. Okay, I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to change this to 70. And again, I can put zeros down here, but if I just write it as a whole number, it means the same thing. Okay? And there's no zeros to deal with because this side, the divisor, does not have any zeros. So I can't get rid of any zeros. I must keep this one. And the last step is divide. Well, 70 divided by 7 is 10. So my estimate there is 10.